Okay, today I'm going to talk about something different. Basically, I'm going to talk about how ancient legendary warriors, how I think they would have fought. And since there's no real examples of this in real life, I'm going to show it with two different comics or anime. And I think it's pretty interesting, and let's get into it. So this is the first one. It's a character called Guts versus a character named Nosferatu Zodd. He's like a demon, but he's you'll see. This guy found by a mercenary group hanging from his mother, who was hanging from a tree. He was hanging by the umbilical cord. The mercenary group takes him in, and so from the time he can hold a sword, he's been fighting in battles. So like normal people couldn't do this. And I mean, and the sword that he uses is a little ridiculous, but it kind of makes sense if you read the whole comic, because it's like someone who trains every single day and fights every single day in battles to the death. And this is how I think they would be in an actual fight. And he's fighting a guy who's Nosferatu Zodd is a 300-year-old demon that just enjoys battles and fighting people in battles. And this dude Guts, the main character, he's the only one who's ever like gave this guy a challenge in 300 years, and this is the second time they're fighting. This is part of the story. I don't want to ruin it, but he's pissed at him. He's pissed at the guy named Griffith. All right, here's Zodd. Shows up. After this first clash, they're not just smacking swords together. They're trying to cut the other guy. They're trying to slash the other guy. And if the other guy can't stop it, then they'll get slashed. Like most movies and most like TV shows, almost everything shows when they show like sword fights, it's just like they're smacking swords together for fun. They're not actually trying to cut the guy, and that's what this whole fight is about. After this initial slash, and I'll stop it at each part, each like scene. Nosferatu Zodd, isn't that such a badass name? All right, that's the first slash, and now they're fighting for real. He first shoulder charges him into the ground to throw him off balance. This whole thing is about inertia and being unpredictable. That's the two main things that matters. Like he hits the ground, he tries Zodd tries to capitalize by immediately charging him after he hits the ground. And then after he hits the ground, he uses the ground to push off with his left hand and also push off with the sword stuck into the ground to move backwards and dodge the sword. And this Zodd dude doesn't stop going, and Guts realizes this, so he's just sticks his sword up because the guy's running full speed, and his inertia wouldn't be able to stop him. Any other, like a normal person would just, I know this is weird to say this about a comic, but a normal person would stop. And then once he stopped, Guts would capitalize and win the fight right then. That's how like important inertia is in these fights. But Zodd is not a normal person. He charges it even harder and just slightly dodges it, because if he dodges too much, he loses control of his inertia. And if he loses control of his inertia, Guts will capitalize immediately right on that point. And there's a lot going on here, but he dodges the sword by like a hair, and then while he's dodging it, since the sword is on the side of his face and Guts can't see that side, he swings his sword so he can't see it. So Guts can't see it. Right at the last second, Guts has a metal hand because he lost his hand. He puts his hand up just in time to block it. And while he puts his hand up, he moves the sword down because now Zodd is underneath his sword. It's like counters upon counters upon counters upon counters. So Zodd dodges that by going underneath, spinning, jumping into the air, and using all that momentum weight to bring it back down. That's where he's up here. He ducks, spins, jumps in the air, and now he has all this inertial weight on that next strike. So he brings it down. Guts realizes this, and he immediately puts the sword. Puts the sword in the ground like a doorstop. So as soon as he hits, it does nothing to him, regardless of how much weight Zodd put into it. And since Zodd hit him like that, and his sword is shaped like that, Guts goes for a disarm, and the way he does it is with that huge sword that he has. He first punches it, then elbows it to kick it up faster, and then he knees Zodd in the hand while the sword is going up away from him. And this throws Zodd off balance and could disarm him if he wasn't a freaking 300-year-old demon. But he goes to disarm him, and now he has Zodd off balance. He takes advantage. It's like he puts him in check, basically, right there. So after he puts him in check with that move, Zodd is thrown off balance, so he pulls back on his sword. Zodd instinctively pulls back his sword so Guts doesn't disarm him. So instead of stopping his attack, Guts moves with the flow of inertia, which causes him to do a full 360 swing. Zodd calmly dodges backwards and has regained control of his inertia and weapon. When Guts did the 360 swing, positioned his feet as if he was anticipating a possible miss, so that as soon as the massive inertial weight from swinging that massive sword 360 degrees missed, he could quickly guide the inertial momentum back downwards as Zodd was backing off to retreat. Having regained control of his weapon, Zodd swings it backhand left to right to block Guts' downward attack. This is Zodd on his toes and moving backwards, meaning his inertial position was locked towards moving in one direction. If you want to understand what I mean by inertial position being locked, stand and then put all your weight on one foot, all of it, and then try to move that foot. It's impossible. That's what I'm talking about. He puts him on his back toes, so then he only has one way to move. He can't move any other way. Once you get inertial locked, that's when a master, I mean, obviously it's a comic, but in real life, that's how a master would immediately win the fight right then. Because you're locked in one move, they know where you're going to move, so they attack that. And that's where you either break your bone or you die. There we go. Guts immediately tries to capitalize because he's on his back foot, so he stabs at him because it's going to force him. He either has to go backwards or get stabbed. And since he's on his toes, going backwards is hard to do because his feet are inertial locked. So Zodd, the only thing he really could have did is a backflip because his whole body was leaning back. His whole inertia was leaning back because this guy is so skilled. He accepts the check. Guts basically puts him in check right there. He's got a shit-eating grin on his face. He's loving it. Third part. This is one of the coolest parts of the whole fight. All right, so they resume the fight. They both swing at each other. They're trying to chop the other dude in half. They're not trying to smack swords. You'll see. This is kind of hard to see, but what Guts does, he welcomes the sword. This guy, his sword's down here in the ground because Guts put his sword on top of Zodd's and then pushed it down and when it made it go further than Zodd wanted it to go. So it got stuck in the ground, and then immediately after that, since it's stuck in the ground and it's metal on metal, Guts ricochets. The ricochet is faster than an actual swing because ricocheting metal on metal right at the dude's head, and that's why he says he dodged. Those reflexes are inhuman because that no one would normally be able to dodge it, but since this dude's a demon, he dodges it. But you see how it's all counters upon counters upon counters, and it continues here. And even though he missed, he doesn't try to stop that huge sword. He just goes along with the flow with it, because that would lock his inertia if he didn't keep going. And then Zodd swings back too. He's a little faster, and Guts can only get his hands up. And then Zodd thinks he has it won, so he starts attacking a lot more. As a result, Guts has to kind of charge him, and then the next move is pretty cool. And since he charged with the sword there, now his sword's right underneath his stomach where you could just slice him. So all he has to do is step, and this is where it gets kind of crazy. At 7:59, there's so much going on. Guts steps forward with his right foot while swinging left to right. Zodd swings right to left at Guts' head. Guts ducks under the swipe, and Zodd dodges by jumping backwards and positioning for a downward swipe at Guts, while Guts uses his sword right to left without changing footwork, and it forces Zodd to smack down on Guts' swing because he'd get hit otherwise. It's like counters upon counters upon counters. It's all like in the moment, flow in the moment, and perfect, efficient movement. They don't waste any type of movement, any step, any inertial weight shift. None of that is wasted. And I think this is how a legendary ancient warrior would have fought. They would have fought exactly like this. Zodd's sword starts to break. Yeah, Zodd's sword starts to break, and he immediately sees this, so he immediately grabs for one of the swords sticking in the ground, goes to swipe Guts, but then he thinks he has it won now, Zodd does, so he's uses too much inertia when he goes for that stab. And that's what let Guts capitalize and move him out of the way and get the stab in. Because Zodd used too much inertia. It was all about inertia and unpredictability. That's how a real legendary warriors would have fought, I think. And the one martial art that teaches this is kind of controversial. It's Sistema. And it's taught to assassins in the Russian military. Anyway, but here's the next video I want to show. That's basically the end. He turns into a demon next, and it's not really a fight anymore. All right, next one is... All right, this is the next one. These two dudes are as good as Guts at fighting. They're both Vikings. The one's a captain of a pirate ship, and that dude talking right now is Thor's. He is he gave up fighting, but he used to be called the Troll because he was so good he was a general in the most elite Viking group or whatever. And this comic or anime actually is actually kind of historically accurate in parts. It's about like the Vikings and during like the 1100s, and the King Canute from England, his takeover. I mean, not from Denmark, taking over England. But anyway, here's the flip. Yeah, they both have a smell. They can smell. They smell that there's something different about the guy, because they know that they're both like elite. He's the only dude that can. The dude in the blue is the only dude that can fight on the one side. Askeladd uses his unpredictability a lot better. Then it shows it better than in the last fight. See, Thor didn't expect that, so inertia doesn't matter because he didn't expect it. So the whole inertial thing goes out the window when it's unpredictable, when you're unpredictable. But he just moved out of the way just enough, and is able to even throw a kick in. Now it's all about inertia. And they both know it. He's kind of like Zodd, he just likes fighting. Now it's about inertia. And he's strong as shit too, so kind of helps. See how he swings the sword like that? He's not. It's like you're throwing your arm, like you're throwing a baseball, but a sword's attached to your hand. You know what I mean? Like it's not his hips that he's using to hit hard like that. It's because he's throwing his arm and then letting it's a relaxed arm. So it has a lot more force. Askeladd, I mean, he understands inertia, but all he can really do is block against this guy. Now he's trying to break his sword. This is where inertia comes in. He knew that Askeladd knows about inertia, like how that all works and how you can't put too much into it, or you can be killed just for using too much inertia. And you'll see. See, wide swing, that's inertia. That's when he knew that he would go for the kill there, which would kill his inertia, make him go where he couldn't control his own body because he was put too much into it. And that's when he strikes. He uses the inertia against his opponent. Because that's all that matters. It's inertial movement control, and unpredictability. And that's how he wins. See, swing wide. That's talking about inertia. He put too much into it. And, I mean, I'll do this again if people like it. But there's a couple more fights I could do. I could do real fights too. But I thought this was interesting. And I got asked on one of my comments to make a video about it. And the reason why I understand all this is when I was little, I used to be a point guard in basketball, where like crossing, like Allen Iverson, he understands this inertial movement, not for killing, but for playing basketball. Like Ovechkin in hockey, he understands this. Hockey was what I understood the most in. You can just feel people's inertia. I don't know, it's weird. You can just feel it. Same with football. Like when a player gets juked in football, that's from inertia. It's inertial movement control. Like they're faking their weight is going one way, but really it's going to go the other way. And that's how they get people to fall on their butt from just a juke. That's what these dudes do, but they do it with in combat, not in sports. And yeah, that's basically everything. Hope you enjoyed it.